do the military medical use today. Thank you. So with that, you can click, okay. I would like Corey and Scott Walker to tell you a little bit about the MMID initiative, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the VerBio pitch competition.
Thanks, David. I hope everybody can hear me. I apologize for not being there in person. I had to make a last-minute trip to New York, but I'm happy to be there virtually. As many of you know, this is going to be the fourth MMID meeting held in San Antonio, first one under the auspices of VelocityTX. We're pretty excited about it. And as in previous years, we're going to try and address the questions that a lot of members of the private sector have about working with military medical personnel. Things like, what are the requirements of the military medical community? How are military medical projects funded by the DoD? How can they find people within San Antonio to collaborate and partner with? How do you license technologies from the military? How do you sell your products to the military? We're going to have, as we did in the last meetings, opportunities for people to meet one-on-one with subject matter experts from all three branches in a variety of different areas to get feedback on their projects, hopefully identify potential collaborators and supporters. And this is the first of 3 mini symposia that are supposed to act as appetizers or teasers for the main event, which is going to be on May 2nd. So today, the 14th, Happy Valentine's Day, is the first one. I'll let Scott talk when I get done here for a second about today's symposium, but I wanted to make everybody aware of the following 2, which are going to be on the second Tuesday in March, which is the 14th, and the second Tuesday in April, which is the 11th. The one on the 14th is going to focus on licensing technologies from the military. We have a moderator, Barry Datloff from US MRDC, and we have panelists from the 59th Medical Wing, Beth Dries, Quentin King from TechLink, and Sylvain Carden from NAMRU SA. So looking forward a month. I hope you'll join us for that symposium as well, spread the word. And I'll turn it over, I think, to Scott, my colleague, who has been so instrumental in helping to organize some of these meetings, to say more about today's mini symposium and anything I forgot to say about MMID. Over.
Thank you, Corey. I really appreciate everyone being here today and being on the phone or online with our webinar. In that, I appreciate your interest in learning more about military, how to work with us, how to support the military. I'm with the 59th Medical Wing, but represent just one part of a larger organization. In the room, we are very blessed to have Dr. Sylvain Carden from NAMRU, and on the phone we'll have Dr. Tammy Crowder from the ISR, as well as the esteemed Bob Charles from MRDC, who has been an amazing person to work with, despite the fact that he's a lawyer and he's a government civilian. He really cares about supporting the customer and the customer's mission. And also, a late newcomer that wasn't on the invite when you signed up, supporting the Navy, we have Miss Diana Nevis. I hope I got that name correct. And so we appreciate her support. So that's the people I just mentioned are the basic panel that'll be here, and you'll be able to ask some questions in a few minutes. But what we're trying to do is to stimulate and promote and support collaborations, because the military medical mission, you can't do it without industry, you can't do it with our academic partners, you can't do it with all the associates and organizations that combine that with nonprofits to foundations. So we're looking for ways to stimulate that and bring it together. So what the information we'll present today is, Corey said on the phone, is a teaser. There'll be some a lot of information presented on the 2nd of May at the large event. So we hope that you can sign up for that. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for companies to come in and either pitch ideas the day before for potential funding, but also on the actual day of the event. For what we've done the last couple of military medical industry days, we've had the opportunity for individuals to sign up for sessions to talk to a panel of the services subject matter experts on various topics, usually though related to topics of interest in wound care, how to better treat our patients and save lives and make a difference in the battlefield. So that'll be part of the invite when you sign up. Is there'll be a link, and we're still working on the link where you can request a slot for one of those, and it's going to be, unfortunately, first come first sort of basis. So when that link is available, I'd say go ahead and it'll be an email. You can request it. We'll ask for some information so that our panel is prepared to talk to you, and then you'll be given a slot. And then on those slots, we'll be able to, on the day of the event, we'll rotate. It'll be a large room like we did last year and back in 2019 before COVID and everything, so that you'll be able to rotate in, discuss with that panel your ideas, get the most out of it you can, whether it's just feedback or direction. So I wanted to make a little pitch for that, and that it hasn't been established yet, but it's forthcoming. But also in the room from the 59th Medical Wing, we have a panel of our T2 expertise. We have Jim Wiseman from the 59th Medical Wing, and then from BAMC, Brooks Army Medical Center, we have Sharon Conoval. So we'll be taking some questions after we do our introductory briefing, and really appreciate Bob Charles. And if we could keep the slides up and getting ready, he'll give us a basic overview of agreements. And personally speaking, my 25 years active duty, and then now serving since 2014 in various roles, I think that CRADAs and other types of agreements, they're tremendously underutilized. I make a joke sometimes that the D in CRADA stands for development. So what I hope that you can take away from this is that here's an opportunity to work with the government, work with industry, work amongst ourselves that is very flexible. And I won't steal any of Bob's thunder. Bob, are you ready?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear. Name it, Charlie.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, thank you so very much. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Corey, Renee, Scott, Jim, Sharon, all of you who are there, all of you who are in attendance. So, you know, during my 20 years active duty, I was stationed twice in San Antonio, once at the old Army Health Services Command headquarters, and once at Brooke Army Medical Center as legal counsel in both places. I love San Antonio. I'm entranced and with all that they're doing at VelocityTX, TRTL to beef up the interplay between all of us together, industry, academia there, and the military. I think it's the right road to go down. And so I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm going to talk very briefly to motivate some questions, I hope, about some authorities that the government has to play in the sandbox with you and your company. The Cooperative Research and Development Agreements, or CRADAs, Material Transfer Agreements, Non-Disclosure Agreements, Commercial Test Agreements are ways that we can help. And taking a step back, I want all of you in industry to appreciate that, and what might already be clear to you is that the government, Uncle Sam, does not make its own medical devices, its own therapeutics, its own vaccines, or any of the other medical products. We oftentimes begin them and do bench work. We have labs, including fabulous labs there in San Antonio. But in the end, we don't get those products through the FDA by ourselves, and we don't commercialize them by ourselves. We are fully dependent upon companies like your companies, like your schools, to help us in both the research and the development of the products. And our job is to work hand in hand with our industry and academic partners to get these products moved out and on the commercial market so that DoD can buy them. So it's important from our perspective that you understand that we are not here to steal your products. And we don't want you to steal our products. We want to work together with you on products that are needed in the military to help the warfighter, and particularly the medical products that we work on here. Why don't we go ahead to the next slide, please? Okay, these are my opinions. Why don't we go on? All right. I'm just so you know, I am currently part of the Army's Medical Research and Development Command in Fort Detrick, Maryland. We are soon to join the Defense Health Agency. That process is moving on. We, as our mission statement says, we provide responsive, well-researched, candid legal support for our clients. And we are part of a bigger mission to bring the best products possible to our warfighter, with the understanding that those need to be dual use products. They need to have a place in the civilian market so that we can use them and sustain them, and that they will be there for the full life of those products. Next, please. You should also know, for those unfamiliar with military medical research, and this is just the Army's research, it doesn't include the very broad scope of Navy and Air Force medical research. We are all over the world. We have labs here in the United States. We have clinical trial centers in East Africa and in Southeast Asia. We are in the Republic of Georgia. The Navy is in South America. They're in Egypt. So we are broadly placed because we have concerns, medical concerns, diseases that are not endemic here in the United States that we need to work on. We work with collaborating partners around the world. We work with foreign government organizations, all for the same end of bringing the best possible products to the warfighter. Next, please. Okay. Why is the military involved in technology transfer? First, it's the law. It's a long story, but going back into the mid 1970s and 1980s, Congress made a decision that government labs were not getting enough of their products out to the commercial market. And they figured out that the primary impediment was that the government is not, we are not capitalists. The capitalists, the risk takers, are really out in the private sector. And I hope it's the people I'm talking to today. So Congress told us, the federal labs, we need to participate with non-federal entities towards the end of bringing products to states, local governments, and the private sector. Also, we have, although we are the federal government and we have a world of debt, not a whole lot of that money is going to military medical research. So our resources are limited. There's a big pot in the federal government, but the amount that we have left for us for medical research is limited. So we are dependent, again, upon the private sector to find resources and expertise, and also finances at times to help us get over the inline of where we're going. Next, please. Okay, now let's talk about what this CRADA is. We've got a question from Geo Firefighter. Does the Army perform freedom to operate? Could you put that back up? I didn't see it. We had a, can someone read that? It's in, maybe it's in the chat room. Does the Army perform freedom to operate on technologies they shift or license to third parties?
And Bob, we can take questions at the end of your presentation.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Stan, we'll get to that. Thank you so much. My presentation is going to be fairly small so that we can leave a lot of time for questions, okay? No, thank you. I don't, nothing to be sorry about. Thank you. Okay, what's a CRADA? Let's go next. The big picture is the CRADA is a kind of government contract that allows for research and development collaborations between federal labs like those you have represented before you today, there in the community classroom, and non-federal parties like yourselves, be you academics, be you industry, be you the city of San Antonio. You're all potential collaborating partners with us. One of the wonderful things about CRADAs is that the law does not require that we compete these opportunities. So if you come to us because you have a great idea in a particular area that we are very interested in, we don't have to go out and find your competition. If one of our labs wants to work with you, they can just make that decision to work with you. We don't have to go through a drawn out process of notifying the world about that. So we can dance with who we want to dance. And what's amazing about a CRADA is unlike your typical contracts where the government is going to just give you money and say, well, go do something for us. What it allows is a sharing of resources that the lab has and that you have with your company, with your academic center, whoever you are. We can share those resources. The only limitation under the law is that the individual labs that you are working with cannot provide you funding. And I'm going to go into some detail about that so you understand the implications of it, because it's not as dire as you might think. Again, this in front of you is the definition in the statute, and I'm going to read it to you, and I want you to listen to how clever Congress was. I think it was 1986. It was the last time Congress did something really smart. And when they came up with this definition of a CRADA. And don't tell anyone in Congress that I said that, please. Okay, here's the definition. It's any agreement between one or more federal laboratories and one or more non-federal parties. Okay, so we need a federal party, a federal lab, and a non-federal lab, or we need multiple of each, under which the government through its laboratories provides personnel or services or facilities or equipment, intellectual property, or other resources. So the federal government can provide any of those, and then it goes on to say with or without reimbursement, which is pretty amazing. We can decide to charge or not, depends on the situation. And then as part of the law, it says, but no funds to the non-federal parties. So the government can provide anything but funds. The laboratory can provide anything it has but funds. You folks, on the other hand, can provide funds, personnel, services, facilities, equipment, IP, or any other resources. And all of those resources from both sides go toward the conduct of specified research and development efforts, which are consistent with the mission of the laboratory with which you're working. So this is really an interesting piece of law. It says provide. It doesn't say what provide means. So we essentially, under a CRADA, the laboratories and the non-federal parties work out the details of those who's going to give what resources on a statement of work towards some R&D, which is of interest to the laboratory. So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to go into a little detail on this, please. So the government can provide any of those resources with or without reimbursement. So this is standalone, discretionary to the lab authority to negotiate and reimburse from zero to fair market value for whatever the lab will provide or has provided. This is really unique to CRADAs, that at the heart of it is the laboratory and its director or commander, depending on the lab, what they call them. They have authority to work out this deal. And if the government's going to charge, depending on the situation, they can charge from zero for its resources up to fair market value. So it's pretty remarkable. This is a one-of-a-kind statute. Go ahead, next, please. But not funds. And so while Brooke Army Medical Center or the 59th or the Navy lab, NAMRU there cannot provide funds to the non-federal parties, that doesn't mean that their federal agency might not have decided to provide some money either to the lab or through a contract or a grant type agreement or something we call an other transaction agreement. There can't be an award to the non-federal party. So I want you, I want you out there to understand that the fact that the lab can't give you cold hard cash doesn't mean that a federal agency can't. In fact, Congress wants in these situations for the private sector and the lab to be collaborating on these programs that are within the mission space of the laboratories. That's how we're going to get the products we need, by working with you, with your resources, your smart people, either from a starting point of our intellectual property that we've previously developed, something you may have developed, or if it's very early stage, just doing the initial bench work together to start doing a proof of concept. Okay, next, please. All right, the non-federal parties can provide any resources at all to the laboratories. And there is authority for the government labs to accept and retain and use the funds, the personnel, the services that you have to carry out the R&D project that you folks are working together. All right, again, it's a trade-off of the resources working together, with the end, we hope, is that the private sector partner is going to take this technology, and if it needs to get through the FDA, we can help with that lift, but because we have lots of expertise, but ultimately it's going to be commercialized and for or by the private sector partner. Next, please. Okay, and all of this is negotiable. So what Sharon and Jim and Scott and our friends from the Navy Lab, from Institute of Surgical Research there in San Antonio, what they do working with you and with the researchers who will actually do the work is figure out, well, what resources are needed and who's going to provide them. We have some unique equipment and expertise at our facilities there. You have unique expertise in facilities. Who's going to give what? The statement of work is put together, and we have some boilerplate that we put in, but the boilerplate is quite flexible depending on the totality of the situation. And we come up with a CRADA, and we have come up with thousands of them. Personally, I've worked on well over 5,000 CRADAs. So this is very common. It's an easy way to play in the sandbox with the smart people in the government. Next, please. All right. And those efforts go towards the conduct of research and development efforts that are spelled out in our statement of work, which are consistent with the missions of the laboratory. And as you know, in San Antonio, those missions are all medical device or therapeutic or algorithms or software or something else. So we're looking in our case towards a mission of medical technologies for the warfighter. Next, please. Okay. That same CRADA authority we use to carry out material transfer agreements, because sometimes we don't need to do a big collaboration together. Sometimes what we need from you is some piece of material that you have or what you need from us might be a biologic or a material that we have. And we do material transfer agreements. They're relatively simple. And again, we can provide materials, we can provide testing, you can do the same. Ultimately, what we're doing is trying to do move a product up the development line so that it can be commercialized. That's what we're doing. We do thousands of those, and we also can enter into non-disclosure agreements, just like other private sector partners that you have. We can enter into those. They aren't really necessary for the government because our scientists there's a federal statute, 18 U.S. Code 1905, which makes it a crime for federal employees to share or improperly share proprietary information of people we work with. So it's not required on our behalf, but if you need it for some reason, we can do it with you. We can enter a non-disclosure agreement. Okay, next. We also have some other authorities, which if you're an academic institution there in Texas, we have educational partnership agreements as part of our STEM outreach. We can use them to provide educational opportunities for the students out there in the high schools, in the junior colleges, at the trade schools in San Antonio, at the universities, where we work together. We can provide expertise, we can provide mentoring, we can provide pieces of equipment to assist students there in your community. We've entered lots of these and we love doing this. So we can enable personnel to serve in positions at a school site. We can teach, we can bring students into our laboratories if that fits. We can provide data so students can use those for master's degree programs if they need it, or a PhD. We've done a whole lot of varieties of these, and it's a great authority. I'm going to move myself a little bit. I've got some windows up above me and the light keeps moving. Next. Okay. With CRADAs, our data rights are negotiable. With DATAs, our formats are negotiable. We are much more concerned about the substance of what's in it than the style, but we do have templates and we try to start there because at least we know what's in it. You can use it, you can give it to your attorney, or you can ask us questions. We're pretty easy to work with. All right, next. Okay, some things that we don't have a lot of negotiation room on. Because we're the federal government, we need to apply federal laws. So we can't enter an agreement that says we will abide, this agreement will fall under Texas state laws and Texas state courts. We just can't do that. That's one of our limitations, but we can agree to a federal court there in San Antonio or whichever one is closest and most convenient for you. That's one of our non-negotiables. With regard to statements of work, we can include milestones, as it says, go, no-go decisions, whatever seems the best way to go for our particular collaboration with you. And CRADAs are much simpler in practically, in fact, in every way than other types of government contracts or grants, in that we can negotiate as the circumstances change, and renegotiating, modifying is relatively simple. Next. A commercial test agreement is a different kind of authority. It is a work for others authority. And we enter those, let's say at the ISR or the 59th, where we have unique, either testing capabilities or expertise that are not easily available in the commercial sector. But one difference is in those cases, the non-federal party is required to pay full freight, that is direct and indirect costs of the laboratory. But it's good to know if you don't really want a collaboration, what you want is for one of our labs to do some testing for you and send you the results. Well, yes, we can do that. Again, if we aren't directly competing against the commercial sector there where you're living. Okay. Well, we are going to open this up to your questions. Hopefully you can send those. I'm looking forward to hearing from Scott and Jim and Sharon and our other panelists who can answer this for you. And Scott, why don't you take it?
Hey, Bob, thank you very much. Appreciate that overview because it's always good to have a basic understanding of agreements. And plus, every time I hear Bob, I write down, I learn something new. So appreciate that for setting the ground rules. Yes, if you're online with Zoom, please go ahead and post your questions. Caitlin has agreed to read them out loud so that any of the panel members can answer. In the room, you just ask you to raise your hand and we'll get around to everybody and try to work all the questions in. And I wanted to stress that the panel members and people providing information, it's our views and not necessarily reflective of the Department of Defense and Navy and Army, Air Force, and as Bob indicated, his wife and his children. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware and that also that the panels, this session is being recorded, so it'll be on online link later on. So if you saw something you like, you can either go back or you can refer a friend to it and say, hey, I heard something good. You might be able to utilize it. And it'll be on VelocityTX's website. So with that being said, though, Bob, this is Scott. I wanted to ask you a quick question. You brought up something that I thought might be important. Can a company who has a CRADA utilize that CRADA with the government to recruit or to elicit for funding on like investors or venture capitalists?
Yeah, again, they can't say, well, the government endorses the particular end product or endorses their company, but we've seen that lots of times where folks, and I'm gonna take this in two angles. One, sometimes a company wants to enter into a CRADA or an agreement with us beforehand in anticipation of applying for a government contract or a grant or a OTA, because that's going to be part of their marketing to the government reviewers. Is if you give the money to X company, they will know that the company has an agreement in place or already has the okay of the government lab director to go ahead and do that. So that's one side of it. And if they want to go outside and tell potential investors, hey, we're working with this government lab. We know that the government has an interest. They have an interest because they have a need for this particular product. It's not a guarantee that we're going to, in the end, buy the product. But if they want to do that, that's fine. That's up to them. Again, as long as they are not saying that the government is endorsing them as a company or this particular product before it's even been commercialized. So that's fine.
Appreciate that. And folks, you got it from the legal representative for military medical research and development. So you can quote Bob on that one. I have a few general questions for the panel to get us started, and then we'll start taking questions. For the panel, wanted to ask, who should they contact in the federal lab to see who has interest in working on, let's say, a CRADA with potential research or development organization? How do they get started?
That's an excellent question, because one of the hardest things to do in working with the federal government is if you have something that you say, hey, I think this would be perfect. The the other side of that is there a need? You know, the defined need, the warfighter, the medical community needs this, and it needs to be, let's say, used in an austere environment. So you may have a great product, but a great thing, a great idea, but if you can't use it in the middle of a jungle somewhere, so you know, marrying up that idea with that need, and then knowing the person that has and is looking at that, whether it's the Army, Air Force, Navy, whatever, in the environment, that is really the secret sauce, because you have to have someone that's going to receive what you have and then take it and either test it or look at it or develop it even further. And that is really the tough part, is finding that person in the DoD, that researcher that's working on what you have in building that relationship. And our offices can assist you in that process, but there's no, getting that person to say yes, or having that facility say yes is hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. If you're looking for a cardiologist, for instance, you've got this product that you want to try out. I could hook you up with the cardiology department at Burke Army Medical Center and see if there's any interest. If I don't know of anybody specifically, I can also look to the IRB board and say, who's been doing a lot of these kind of things, and they can help me. So by all means, you can reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help put things together for you.
I was gonna ask Diana if you had anything on that. Thank you for joining us. Oh, you're on mute.
Diana, you're still muted.
We've all done that. It's
Hi, can you hear me?
loud and clear.
Yes, good.
Gosh, you've got an echo though. If you're not talking, if you wouldn't mind muting, that might help.
It looks like you're on your phone and your computer.
Try now.
You're muted again, Diana.
She may have muted everybody.
Hello?
Hi.
There? Sorry.
Loud and clear. You're good to go. Go ahead.
Hi,
please.
can you hear me now? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay, no, so what I was gonna say is just as well with the Navy, I know Dr. Carden is very involved. So any partner out there, wanting to reach out to us, after, you all, collaborate, him and I, we always come back and I get with a potential vendor or partner, and that's how we begin our packages. And the process usually takes maybe about a month to a month and a half, because we do get involved with our legal up in Maryland, but it's a very pretty easy, clear process that we have for Navy regarding CRADAs and NDAs.
Excellent. This is kind of a loaded question for the panel, but how do I start drafting a CRADA? Is there a template online that I can just start? I'm a company or I'm academic, and I'm just going to start developing. Is that correct?
I'll jump on this one.
Thank
Bob Charles has created beautiful templates for us that we use. I'm more than happy to share those draft documents. Again, like you said, they're negotiable. There's only very few things in there that we cannot negotiate on. But I'll be more than happy to share those draft documents to anybody who wants them. Take a look at them, share them with your lawyers, and then come back to me. We'll negotiate things out. And again, it's pretty easy to work with us.
And the order office has those documents. And so again, it is reaching out to folks like myself, Sharon and Diana, and saying, hey, we'd
Yes.
like to do this. And that's the best place to start. And it allows for that conversation to take place. It can be via email or whatever, to just answer questions, because there's always 1,000 questions that you have, especially working with the government. From the outside looking in, it looks like an elephant. If you have a fork and you're eating an elephant, where do I start? And a lot of times you're looking through a soda straw and all you see is gray skin. And again, but knowledge is the key in pressing the right button, and getting with the right folks right off the bat to answer those questions.
Right, and for us, I know we have all of our templates on our website, and once you want to start collaborating, I will be more than helpful and more to get with you regarding these templates. But a lot of the instructions are on there. But again, I am more than willing to help just to start the process.
Thank you. Follow-up question that would be, what kind of information should I prepare or have ready when I start engaging a board office in teaching function? Or is what goes into a CRADA that I should already have maybe prepared?
As my colonel puts it, Colonel Shangato, I'll give her credit for this. Our CRADAs are considered prenups. You've got an idea, we want to do it together. It's the who, what, when, where, how, why. If you already have the protocol done, we take that protocol, we'll use a lot of that goes into the CRADA as far as your objectives and those kind of things. So again, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. I've been doing this for over 10 years. And so I'm more than happy to help with anybody who needs any help on it.
And is there a need? Does the Navy, Army, Air Force, or whoever have a need for that product, or what the idea that you have? That is the secret sauce, really.
Anything to add, Diane?
Hey, Scott, we
Go ahead,
have
Bob.
Tammy Crowder on the line, but she says, please unmute my phone line so I can respond. I'm not quite
I
sure.
think it was done on purpose.
Oh, no. She's got to put a quarter in the back. Go ahead, Tammy. Hopefully you're unmuted.
Hey Tammy, in the chat, can you put your phone number so I can make sure that I'm unmuting the correct one?
In the meantime, Scott, there's a whole bunch of questions if you want to, from the audience, if you want to look at one of those.
Roger that. Can you wanna
Absolutely. I'm just gonna go ahead and read these out in the order they were sent in, starting with Stan's question from earlier. Does the Army perform freedom to operate on technologies they ship through license to third parties?
Good question. That one's aimed at both you and Tammy, Bob.
I'm not quite sure I understand the implication of what Stan was asking. We do have IP counsel. If you're wondering, can you work on one of our technologies that we have IP on? Can we collaborate on that together? Sure, we can give you a research license for the purpose of that collaboration. If that's what you're asking, that's the answer. If not, Stan, if there's some way that you could let us know what it was you were looking for.
It was associated more with a license. When you provide a license to a patent, do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
When the Army provides a license to a patent, typically there might be other patents that might interfere with it. For example, they call it freedom to operate. And I'm not a lawyer, but it seems the freedom to operate is sort of a big discussion in the world of IP right now. So as you legal situations.
So I guess what I would do if I were in that position, or if I were in your seat, I would throw that, it's gonna depend, of course, on the piece of IP. We have a really good IP division in my office, and we can look at it and make a decision on that. My suspicion is that they're gonna say, well, we can't guarantee you, we can do our research, you can do your research, but the government's not going to guarantee you that there's not something out there that we're missing. And so I think that's how it's going to work.
And Scott, this is Stan. We definitely wanted to give you a point in the right direction, but also wanted to utilize this opportunity to put a plug in for the session on the 14th of March is going to be directed solely at patents, licensing, invention disclosures. And we'll have a representative from TechLink also that will be participating. So, but definitely wanted to give you some information to your question. Get started. Tammy, are you unmuted? I know you might have some information to provide to the earlier questions.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Was that a yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Okay. I am unmuted. I don't have anything to add to the last question, except to say, Bob, Marlena Titus, one of the IP attorneys, says exactly what you say. It's really the burden of making of the lines of where one can operate is on the licensee. Over.
Tammy, this is Scott. Did you have any inputs to some of the previous questions before that? When you were trying to unmute?
Sure. Yeah. The one on the CRADA template and working on the CRADA, it helps me to think about the CRADA as two parts. One is sort of the business rules, and then the other is the statement of work, which is, you know, what the government's going to do and what the collaborator's going to do. And in our shop, in any event, it works best for the tech transfer office to work out the business rules with the tech transfer office of the collaborator and the investigators on each side to work out the statement of work. And it's different than a statement of work that goes in a research proposal. For example, if ISR is going to provide, you know, space and network access, that would not be something you put in your proposal as part of a statement of work, but it would be something we put in the statement of work for the CRADA. So hopefully that's helpful to the audience. Because there's really two parties involved, the investigators, the science folks, and then the business folks. Over.
Well, it does. Thank you. Okay, next question.
Yes, our next question online is, what does the duration of a CRADA look like? Also, can the CRADA team help us identify a collaboration partner in various military branches?
Excellent question.
Our CRADAs are typically 5 years or less. We can't go more than 5 years. We can, at the end of that 5 years, we can do another one, or we can extend out past that point, at that point. But when we write them, they're only going to be good for up to 5 years. As far as collaborating partners, I think we all pretty much know each other in this world in San Antonio. So I can refer out to Jim and Diane and Tammy, and we all work together really well.
And that really is the part of the equation that is probably the hardest to get. You know, is there someone there that's researching on exactly what you have and exactly the idea, and it fits a need that they're looking at? And you know, it's just, and we can assist in that, but it may not be successful. It's just giving it a go, so to speak, in that process. But going
If I
into
might,
this, go ahead.
if I might, many of our CRADAs arise because the folks from industry, academia, and our folks they run into each other at national meetings in that particular technology area. And they're looking at posters, they're listening to presentations, and they just go up and say, you know, I'm doing something in that space that sounds like you and your organization and mine ought to work together. Why don't we kind of sit down and have a general talk without sharing anything proprietary, and see if maybe we want to team up, consider teaming up together. And if it looks like that kind of early date might work, they go back to their technology transfer office. If they're the government person, they go back to their business people. If they work for a company, and that's where the work begins. But it's often just something done on a napkin, or over dinner, or over a couple beers at a national meeting, because there's not just one way that this happens. These collaborations arise in a multitude of ways. You read a part of the professional technical literature and say, wow, that's interesting what that Navy person is doing. I wonder, and I see his email, you just contact him and say, I wonder if we could have a phone call and talk about a potential collaboration, because I think we've got something you might need or want. So again, these dates, these early marriages start in a number of ways.
Thanks, Bob. This is Scott. I was going to add, sometimes you might not know who's doing the research and development in that area, but if you contact someone who's an end user, say like special operations forces, they'll probably know who to reach back which lab has that capability or interest, and help work it backwards. So and at these meetings, SOMA is coming up in a couple of months. MHSRS is a big conference, but it's some of these more specialized conferences or meetings, or, opportunities to either talk to the research and developers in the military that you can partner with, or the end user who can direct and support. And I always argue for that end user because those are the individuals that will pull a project to develop at the end of it all. But online, any other inputs for that? That was a really good question.
I was going to add another way for us that CRADAs evolve is we have a clinical burn center, and there are companies that have dressings they want to try out or some kind of burn wound treatment, and they approach us for a CRADA, and they pay us to conduct research for them. So it's not a commercial testing agreement. It's literally a research collaboration, and they are transferring funds to the ISR for our efforts. Over.
Thank you, Tammy. Is that clinical tests or preclinical or both?
It's clinical collaborative research, but it's not a clinical testing agreement. We've had those, but what I'm referring to specifically is CRADA, Cooperative Research and Development Agreement. Back and forth of what's good, what's bad, what could be better. It could be something as simple as packaging, right? It could be the size of the bandage. There's a whole lot of things it could be. We could spend all day on that, but I was just making the point that there are sometimes companies that have something that they think that we need, and they want our input on it. They want to continue to further develop it, and they will pay us for that. And we do that under a CRADA.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Before we take any more, any questions in the room?
Is there a single source where you can find what the needs are for all the 6 branches of the military?
Great question. Take a crack at it.
Not that I'm aware of for single source. I wish there were. That would be, that's logical.
Is there a good source where you can find specifics? All the grants are different, even going on the resource. SIBRs and all those have different needs, but is there kind of an overreaching sort of that really goes, say, for example, the Army or the Air Force, what their needs are, rather than individually looking at each one of these SIBRs?
Scott, could you say the question again? It's hard to hear on this end.
It's a great question of where can I go to see either prioritized list of unified military requirements that need research and development, or from individual services.
One place to go, for example, is to the MRDC, my command. The various programs put out a broad area announcement, both under our other transaction authority and for contracting, and they go into fairly big detail big details about what areas we're looking for technologies, and often specifically the kind of technologies. So if you go to the U.S. Army Medical Research, what do I want? USAMDA, if you can give them the USAMRA. Yeah.
Okay, commercially corrected medical research program.
Yeah, and they will tell you the kind of technologies that are being looked for, either the disease state or the kind of wound care, and often they'll go into some detail. Also, if you go to the medical technology MTech, let's see, medical technology, what's the E stand for? I'm blanking. Enterprise, bless you, consortium. If you go to MTEC, MTech, and go to their website, they give really big details about what the military is looking for. And also, if you're a small company, you might consider joining that organization because they get the heads up on what technology areas programs are going to be coming out and with how much money. So there you go.
Hey, Bob. Also, mrdc.health.mil has all of the program areas, what we refer
Thank
to
you.
as the program area directorates or pads. And if they select view, whichever one it is, program, they will see what the priorities are. Over.
Great. Thank you. And Shireen, thank you.
It's a good opportunity for me to put a plug in for the events on the 2nd of May. We'll have service representatives to talk about their prioritized needs in the morning, the one-on-one sessions. And from the Air Force, we'll have Dr. Tanisha Hamill for AFMIRA, Air Force Medical Readiness Agency. So that'll be something that's hit really hard, but it's an ongoing problem in that's one of the things items that DHA, by trying to pull together a lot of our medical research and development, is to make sure we prioritize that. And then what they're discussing though is where are they putting their money? Put their money where your mouth is. That's what they're trying to do. And yes, please, I'm almost out of time.
Oh, no problem. I just want to add, because he kind of touched on it a little bit with USAMDA's, the military medical development activity or material, I'm sorry, medical material development activity. They're the logistics arm, for the military medical in general, but they do have certain things. So if you have a product that they need or that they need a better version of, that's where USAMDA comes in. He kind of touched upon it a little bit. I know it's MRDC and everything like that kind of helps out with what you guys are looking for. But just so you know, if you do have something, USAMDA is a really good one as far as the logistics side of the military.
Which I keep in mind, typically the military budget probably like for every $10 of research, we have like $1 or $2 for development. So depending on the maturity of your technology that you're working on, it's a whole lot easier to get research funding and a lot harder to get development funding. And that's what we really try to emphasize when you're transitioning. Try to look for other commercial entities and processes where you can get additional funding, investors, angel investors, any way to build that up, and so you'll have a greater likelihood of transitioning, but and not to build the military version. Usually, if it's a military version, you can't afford it. If it's a commercial version that the military can use, then that's the best of everyone. The cost go down. But I think we're just about out of time, right? Yeah, we're out of time. Well, if you posted questions online, and if you haven't, please post them. We're going to address those questions in follow-up emails. And I really appreciate everyone's time today to hear some more about research and development. Something I learned today that was important that I wanted to share with y'all is when I'm doing some of my research, I found out that back in the 1960s and 70s, 70%, and these are stats I can apply to, of the innovative research funding was provided by the government. And that has totally shifted. And now it's in the last 10 or 20 years, it's 70% is industry, about 20% is government. So that perspective is completely changed. You think about it, all the space-based technology, that's not the government funding it. That's the Elon Musk of the world. So it puts more emphasis on military needing to work with industry, working with academia, working with nonprofits to help address some of the military needs. And there's a huge list of them. We'll share that with the team on the 2nd of May. So again, thank you for your time today. Thank you, panel members, for great input. And like I said, still get your questions in because we'll try to answer them via email. Anything else? Did we miss anything?
Yeah.
Corey's gonna ask.
Oh, Corey, please. Sorry, Corey.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there are a couple of final closing slides here that we wanted to share. I believe the registration for the main event is set up. I want to thank all the panelists and participants in the call today. I'm hoping that this will whet your appetite for the main event. I'm told that that QR code that you can see will take you to an Eventbrite page where you can register for the main MMID event. We're working on planning some sort of special events around MMID, perhaps the day before, but we'll keep you updated on that. And also, I think we saw a couple of questions in the chat about can we get a copy of Bob Charles's slides? I think we can probably do that. And I think it would be good to also provide for all the participants today the email or contact information for the panelists so that if they have follow-on questions, they can reach out. And as you probably saw at the beginning, this session was recorded and will be put up, hosted on, I believe, the VelocityTX YouTube channel, but I'll have to get confirmation. And when we have more information about that, we can provide that to everybody who participated today. So again, I just want to thank everybody. Mark the dates, 14th of March and 11th of April for the next two mini symposia. We should have registration open soon for the March event, which is going to be in a month. And we hope you got something useful out of the discussion today. And again, thank you all for participating.
Thanks, Corey. Let's get started.